Hello! Welcome to Wheel Talk. I'm Recappa Sedai. Today we are going to discuss my favorite Forsaken, Graendal. Why do I love Graendal? Why do I root for her? Does it make me a monster? We're gonna dive into Graendal's backstory, her best moments, and why I live for this horrible person. By the way, if you haven't finished reading The Wheel of Time, this video has spoilers. My hair is in my face. It will mess you up. If you haven't finished reading the series, you should not be watching this. You've been warned. Let's get to the video. I've had enough of this intro. Let's talk about Graendal.
Who loves long books and tiny warders? Who's so over the Amerlin's orders? Who loves making every novice cry? Recappa Sedai.
Oh, that's me! So, Graendal. Let's start with a recap of Graendal's backstory. In the Age of Legends, Graendal's name was Camaril Meridim Nindar. For this part of the story, before she's turned to the shadow, we're gonna call her Nindar. Nindar was a world-famous psychologist and healer. One of my rings fell. I'll find it later. She immersed herself in curing those with mental illnesses that the power and healing could not touch. She was also a noted ascetic, not only living a spare and simple life, but preaching that others should as well. And for me, this is the fun thing about Graendal's backstory. As Nindar, she lived a life of abstinence. She avoided unnecessary pleasures as much as possible, and she looked down on people who indulged themselves, which was everyone. She hated everyone. In private, she was inevitably abrasive and cutting toward anyone who did not live up to her standards of the simple life. Within 10 years after the drilling of the bore, she reversed all of this completely. Some years after, she became the second of those called Chosen to go over to the Dark One. The life Graendal lived as Nindar is the complete opposite of who she was as a Forsaken. She spent all her Age of Legends years restraining herself. She didn't believe people should have nice things, or fancy clothes, or good sex. And it pissed her off that no one else was on board with that train of thought. Probably because, given her lifestyle, she wasn't getting to enjoy those things. By the time the bore was drilled, she had developed contempt for all people. And she was basically like, I'm the only one who knows how to live a good life. No one else is doing it. And now the world is ending because I'm surrounded by assholes. You know what? They deserve it. You know what else? Since the world is falling apart anyway, I deserve to live the good life. For once. You all want to be assholes? I'll show you how to be an asshole. You all want to be extravagant, selfish monsters? Let me show you how it's done. I haven't had a vacation in 300 years. It's Nindar's turn, damn it! The Great Hunt mentions that most of the Forsaken were named by those they betrayed. I'm not sure that's the case with Graendal because her name means vessel of pleasure in the old tongue. It seems like something she'd have chosen for herself, but I could be wrong. Let me talk more about Graendal's name because I think it's fun and we do whatever I feel like on Wheel Talk. In the epic poem Beowulf, Grendel is a monster Beowulf kills. He's not similar to Wheel of Time Grendel. Also, this Grendel is Grendel. Grendel's mother, however, is another antagonist in Beowulf. She has no name, she's just Grendel's mother. I didn't write it. She tries to avenge her son's death. Then Beowulf tracks her down to her lair under a lake and kills her. The Old English texts of Beowulf are ambiguous about how Grendel's mother looks. There's debate over whether she's a monster, a warrior, a demon, or a lady. Which I love because Graendal from the Wheel of Time is all of those things. Many Wheel of Time fans, myself included, think Graendal was named after this character in Beowulf. Maybe that's what I want to believe because Grendel's mother is a mysterious character to literary scholars in our world. And if the Wheel of Time is real, which it might be, we don't know, if it's all real and we're living during another turning of the wheel, I can see how Graendal in the Wheel of Time would evolve into Grendel's mother in the story of Beowulf. If you told Grendal's story over centuries and centuries, I can see how that would happen. Which is why I bring all of this up. I think Grendal's name is a cool reference. I know many of Jordan's names are based on Arthurian legend, but I do think he took Grendal's name from Beowulf. And I think it was a fun choice. I love saying Grendal, and I love what it conjures for me. Enough of this nonsense! Nindar is the second to be named Chosen. I did some basic research to confirm who was the first. I assumed it was Lanfear. It wasn't Lanfear. She swore to the shadow later in the game. This basic research snowballed. I looked up Samael and I looked up Samael, and every source says he was among the first to turn to the shadow. That doesn't mean first. Also, when Grendel first turned to the shadow, she kept it a secret. When she announced herself as a dark friend, it was a turning point. That day, the first known Trolloc army appeared, and the War of Power began. But she was named Chosen and recruited Samael before that. When the companion says Grendel was second to be named Chosen, I assume that includes the 12 or more Chosen who died during the War of Power. That's my warder barking out there, as you can hear. I asked her to shut up because I was recording, but she has trouble listening. That's just warders these days. When the companion says Grendel was second to be named Chosen, I assume that includes the 12 or more Chosen who died during the War of Power. When it says Ishamael was among the first to turn to the shadow, to me it sounds like he wasn't the actual first to be named Chosen. The first could have been some random Chosen who was killed during the War of Power. Of our 13 Forsaken, it's not impossible that Grendel was actually the first one named Chosen. Maybe when the companion says she's second, it's within the context of our main 13. But after researching, I can't confirm that. My hair's caught again. Oh my god. If you can share definitive evidence which of our 13 Forsaken was named Chosen first, let me know in the comments. And a bunch of folks are gonna say it's obviously Ishamael. I'm being silly. Imagine that. My hair's caught again. Knowing that at least 12 Forsaken died in the War of Power, I can't confirm it. Enough of this! Moving on. Grendel during the War of Power. Her methods did not involve soldiers. Her tools were intrigue, subversion, and sabotage. She was perhaps the most subtle user of compulsion. Among the Forsaken, she always supported whoever seemed to be winning. Love that! Let's wrap up Grendel's history and get to the books. Lews Therin hates Grendel, particularly because he killed someone named Yennefer, but also just because, you know, she's Grendel. When LTT seals away the Dark One and traps the Forsaken, Grendel is right there with them. When she wakes in the Third Age, Grendel goes to Arad Doman and starts masquerading as Lady Basine. Which brings us to the events of the books. Grendel's first appearance is in the Fires of Heaven prologue. So, nearly half the surviving Chosen in one place, and no one trying to kill anyone who would have expected it before the great Lord of the Dark returns. Ishamael did manage to keep us from each other's throats for a time, but this... Do you always speak so freely in front of your servants? Samael said. Grendel blinked, glanced back at the pair, as if she had forgotten them. They won't speak out of turn. They worship me, don't you? The two fell to their knees, practically babbling their fervent love of her. This is the first major Forsaken meeting in the series, and right away, Grendel stands out as the interesting one. I'm not saying she's nice, but I live for her. If this Rand al'Thor really is Lews Therin Telamon reborn, Grendel went on, settling herself on the man's back, where he crouched on all fours. I am surprised you haven't tried to snuggle him into your bed, Lanfear. Or would it be so easy? I seem to remember Lews Therin led you by the nose, squelched your little tantrum, eyes. You were so obsessed with him, you'd have stretched out at his feet if he said rug. Lanfear's dark eyes glittered for a moment. He is not Luz Theron himself. How do you know? Grendel asked, smiling, as if it were all a joke. I love when Grendel reads the other Forsaken for filth, and then she's like, just kidding, don't be mad. Or do be mad, I don't care, it's funny. That's my kind of queen. But Grendel doesn't insult the Forsaken just for fun. She knows how to push their buttons. She also knows that because of her lifestyle, the other Forsaken take her less seriously. They're having a serious meeting, and Grendel sits down on one of her pets like he's a bench, which probably seems ridiculous to the other Forsaken. Grendel wants that. She wants them to think she's ridiculous. She wants them to underestimate her. Grendel's dynamic with the other Forsaken is a big part of why I love her. She analyzes them and deliberately chooses how she wants to come across. Later in the Fires of Heaven, Grendel, Samael, Lanfear, and Ravin, we're gonna say Ravin. Grendel, Lanfear, Samael, and Ravin discuss a plan. Samael will distract Rand, while the other three link to take Rand down. Samael objects. The golden-haired woman threw back her head and laughed. Poor man, she said mockingly, waving a beringed hand at him. Do you think he would not notice that you were linked? I think Lord of Chaos is the book that shows us who Grendel truly is. At times, Messa-Ana wondered whether Grendel really took note of anything beyond her sensual pleasures. I wondered whether you would be here, the new arrival said lightly. You three have been so secretive. No, it would be a dire mistake to take Grendel at surface value. Most who had taken her for a fool were long since dead, victims of the woman they disregarded. Grendel's first major alliance is with Samael, and it shows how Grendel operates. She wants to kill Rand, but the Dark One won't allow it. So Grendel aims Samael at Rand to kill him for her. However, Samael lies that he's on track to be nameless, and Grendel believes him. That disappoints me. I like to think Grendel is smarter than the others when it comes to this stuff, but she plays it safe and she gets behind whoever she thinks is winning. She also does a decent job of nudging Samael to attack Rand. The Samael-Grendel scene in Chapter 6 is a ton of fun. I almost expect to see the king himself here serving wine, he continued. You know, I choose only the most exquisite. Al-Salam is not up to my standard. Side note, Elyda's Aes Sedai kidnapped King Al-Salam, and Grendel is just playing the situation. She has kidnapped Al-Salam's family, and they're proclaiming false orders to cause chaos. Throughout this scene, Grendel refers to Rand as Luz Theron. Samael keeps correcting her. It pisses him off because Samael hates Luz Theron. So Grendel keeps saying it. Samael's hand trembled with anger, nearly slopping punch from his goblet before he could still it. Rand al'Thor was not Luz Theron. If he frightens you, then kill him. Before the words were well out of his mouth, he would have swallowed them if he could. Disbelief and scorn twisted Grendel's face. I serve the great lord and obey. I find the alliance between Samael and Grendel really fun to read. I love when they scatter the Shido with the full boxes. That tickles me. My ring fell. Ugh. It's gonna stay on this time. It's gonna stay on. I love that Grendel survives Samael, and that after he's dead, she takes that ring Angreal from his things. Get it, Grendel? Samael tricked her, but she came out on top. It can be hard to track what each Forsaken does. So let's recap Grendel's activities leading up to her alliance with Aran'gar. We will get to Asmodean later, but here's another big one. Grendel compelled Jane Farstrider before he met up with Matt. Stay on. Ugh. Jane was already under compulsion from Samael. Once Ishi was done, Grendel snagged him. Grendel, knowing his true identity, picked him up to use his age like a beauty spot among her pets. She sent Farstrider off to Abu Dar under very subtle compulsion, not really believing that there was much chance of a cache being there. She chose to use him instead of Dark Friends because she had control of Farstrider. None of the other Forsaken knew that. If Farstrider were to find anything, she wanted it all to herself. Jane/Noel broke free and helped Matt, but there were gaps in his memory. He was compelled by Samael and Grendel, and it's debatable how aware of that he was. Knowing about his compulsion makes his last words more interesting. If you ever meet a Malkiri, you tell him Jane Farstrider died clean. At first I thought, given all of Jane's adventures, he was referring to something long ago. Now I think Jane knew he had been compelled. He didn't want to be remembered that way. Bottom line, Jane was under light compulsion when he met Matt, which is why he had memory gaps. I lost my ring. Grendel also causes chaos in Doman, obeying her order to let the Lord of Chaos rule. She sends fake orders to Idaralda from King Hessalam. Orders that will prolong war with the Dragonsworn in Doman. When Rand cleanses the taint, Varen fights her, linked to Shalon and Kumira. There's not much to say about this fight other than the fact that it happens, but Varen fighting Grendel makes me so happy. I freaking love it, and I'm so glad they both survive. Kumira dies, but I get over that really fast. Also, at some point, I'm pretty sure Grendel compels Child Bayar. We'll come back to that. In Knife of Dreams, we get the alliance with Aran'gar. It's short-lived, but I enjoy this pairing. She meant to use Grendel and dispose of her, not be caught in one of her traps. She stretched out a hand to caress Grendel's cheek. Something more than an alliance might come of it. She had always fancied Grendel. I love that Aran'gar thinks she'll use Grendel and won't be caught in one of her traps. That is the opposite of what happens. I just tried on my Melisandre necklace and I have to say it looks very Grendel. We're gonna keep it for the rest of the video. It's part of the look now. I just threw one of my rings again. In the Gathering Storm, Rand sends Ramshalon into Natrin's Barrow. Ramshalon returns under compulsion. Rand balefires Natrin's Barrow, and the compulsion is gone. Towers of Midnight shows us what really went down. Grendel has Aran'gar and Delana weave compulsion on Ramshalon. Then she uses the true power to possess a dove. A raven would be easier, but a raven would be recognized as a spy, so it's a dove. Nynaeve checks Ramshalon for compulsion, and Rand takes out the access key. She released the dove and snapped her eyes open. Go. She had to go. Aran'gar turned. So much power. What is he doing, Aran'gar? She and Delana had made the weaves of compulsion. Grendel formed two shields and slammed them into place. Grendel, Aran'gar said. Voice panicked. What are you? It was coming. Grendel leapt for the gateway, rolling through it. She struggled to dismiss the gateway and caught one glimpse of the horrified Aran'gar before everything behind was consumed in beautiful, pure whiteness. Yes! Aran'gar was an idiot for trusting her. I find that part delicious. Next, Moradin gives Grendel the Dream Spike to help her kill Perrin. I really thought Grendel would kill Perrin. Part of me wanted her to. At that point on my first read, I was rooting for Grendel, and Perrin was getting on my nerves. But even with the Dream Spike, Grendel fails to kill Perrin. Perrin Aybara had escaped. She felt stunned. That fool Isom, Grendel thought. And that idiot White Cloak. The idiot White Cloak is probably child Byar. Byar attacked Perrin from behind while Perrin was saving White Cloaks from a Trolloc attack. Byar was probably compelled by Graendal, or he was a dark friend in her employ. At the end of Towers of Midnight, Shaidar Haran shows up and he's like, 3 Forsaken are dead because of you, Graendal. What the actual fuck? Graendal's like, okay, hang on, that's not what happened. But Shaidar Haran doesn't care. He kills her and reincarnates her as Hessalam. Let's talk about the 3 Forsaken who died because of Grendel: Asmodean, Aran'gar, and Messana. Grendel balefired Asmodean at the end of the Fires of Heaven. He pulled open a small door, intending to find his way to the pantry. There should be some decent wine. 1 step and he stopped, the blood draining from his face. You! No. The words still hung in the air when death took him. All those years, fans debated who killed Asmodean. The correct answer was Grendel. But why did Grendel kill Asmodean? He was teaching Rand, so it might have been that, but it was probably a knee-jerk reaction. We know why Grendel left Aran'gar to die. Holding Grendel responsible for Messana's death is a stretch. Grendel changed the battleground with the Dream Spike, but all that did was make it impossible for Messana to run away from Egwene. Messana's fall wasn't Grendel's fault, but who cares? The Dark One sure doesn't. Anyway, Shaidar Haran's pissed that Grendel caused these 3 deaths. I think we can assume they weren't part of the Dark One's plan, which means she wasn't ordered to kill Asmodean, she just did it. In the final book, we get Grendel as her ugly, evil witch alter ego, Hessalam. Hessalam means without forgiveness. I respect this narrative for Grendel. There is something very satisfying about it, but here's my thing. Once she becomes Hessalam, it no longer feels like Grendel. Even though I know Hessalam is Grendel, I miss Grendel in the final book. How Grendel presents herself is a huge part of the character. And when that's stripped away, all we have left is an ugly witch who puts spells on people. In A Memory of Light, I have to remind myself that Hessalam is Grendel. I don't love that. When Perrin and Aviendha fight her in the last battle, it should feel like these major characters are battling Grendel. Instead, it feels like they're fighting a new character. For that reason, I don't love the Hessalam thing, but Hessalam/Grendel is effective in the last battle. So effective, you wonder why Forsaken weren't doing this kind of thing all along. She compels the great captains to lose their battles. A devastating blow. She compels Ruark to guard her. Ruark attacks Aviendha, and Avi has to kill him in self-defense. So messed up, I love it. Avi fights the Grendel Hessalam witch lady at Sheol Ghul. As Grendel weaves compulsion, Avi picks apart a tied-off gateway. It explodes, the compulsion rebounds, and Grendel is left worshipping Aviendha. The explosion also blasts off some of Aviendha's toes. After that fight, Avi had significantly less toe. Hessalam carries her to the camp for healing, and that's the last we see of her. Once the dust of the last battle cleared, I'm sure Hessalam was executed, but I like to think she fetched Aviendha a few Uzquais before facing the headsman. Ugh, I lost my ring again. In conclusion, here's why I consider Grendel to be the most entertaining Forsaken. The other Forsaken want vengeance, validation, or power. But Grendel is different. She has given up on people. She has given up on the world after trying to help. And she's decided it's her turn to live the good life. We are all going down and it's everyone else's fault, so I might as well enjoy myself. Sometimes in this series, the motives of Dark Friends seem weird to me, but I get why Grendel wants to be a Forsaken, and I like that about her. That's it for this episode. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support Real Talk and help it continue, the best way is to sponsor the show on Patreon. Patreon. There's a link in the notes. All levels of contribution are fabulous. If you can like the video and subscribe, that would be wonderful. It helps the channel. And until next time, walk in the light and keep it real. When the companion said... That's my warder throwing around a plastic bottle. She does that.